my material up. But
Recording in progress.
While even I continue to try and get on the screen, I will start by briefly talking about myself. I know that Ronald has introduced me, but allow me to tell you a little bit about myself, even as I make effort to get this up on the screen. Ronald, as you have rightly said, my name is Iga Zinunula Samuel, and I've been in rural development work since 1990. Ladies and gentlemen, I first worked as a veterinary assistant starting January 1990. And I've been lucky that I have managed to work virtually in every part of Uganda. And to be honest, I first worked simply doing my work as an extension worker. And all I did was to talk about controlling pests and using the right spacing in crops and, feeding the animals the right food. At one point, I was in charge of zero grazing in Kamuli district. And I remember clearly what that meant in terms of concentrates. And then I got onto the dairy development program, and we would talk about the technology. Many years later, going back, okay, not so many years later, going back to school, going to university, I still had this thing, okay, we talk about the technologies, but why do the people remain unable to go forward? And then luckily, leaving government and joining USAID projects in Bunyoro, in Kabale, working in 5 districts over there, I continue to ask that same question. I'm in rural development work, but why don't the people seem to be getting better, even when they seem to be adopting the technology? Some of you will remember the Rural Farmers Scheme and the other efforts that have continued to try and make more incomes come into the pockets of the farmer. And so I must be honest that the business clicking occurred when I joined Enterprise Uganda as a member of staff and undertaking the entrepreneurship training workshop. And so I would say right from the beginning that if nothing else is done, one should get some practical business mindset training from whichever source, but I'm not afraid to recommend Enterprise Uganda's ETW. Thank you. Ronald, I'm really trying my best to get on, but it says I have to join with video, and when I join with video, it goes off. So let me join without video and see if I'll be able to transmit what I want to transmit. It's not your fault, it's mine. Forgive me, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, well, I think we can hear you clearly. And if you had the presentation, I could just put it up.
Just a moment, please. Just one moment.
All right, friends, let's just requesting for just a couple of minutes for us to help with Mr. Iga's connection, and then we will get back on. We apologize for that. Friends, we apologize. I think Mr. Iga's connection has dropped, but I've just talked to him and he's trying to log back on. We really apologize for that delay, but we are doing everything possible to get back on. All right. Yeah, welcome back,
Hello,
Mr. Iga. I
Dee.
think you can, yes.
Thank you. This is it. We are talking about agriculture, pricing and marketing. I've got a technical assistant to try and get onto the laptop, but let me speak to you off the phone for now. The purpose of our discussion today is to see exactly what Henry Sembangi was talking about. And I must say that it is not a challenge that is individual to anybody. It is to all of us who are in the farming business. And as it is today in Uganda, we need to understand the background in which we are operating and go on from there. To And today in Uganda, the majority of people are directly on the land. Some percentages say up to 60%, 68%. Others say up to 80% of our people are directly dependent on the land. They are in production agriculture. Whatever the percentage is, the truth is that today we are living largely on a subsistence agricultural system, largely. What happens is that the farmer is not necessarily getting into agriculture for profit. They're not getting into farming as a business. They are doing farming as a way of life. What happens is that low input, low output technologies are deployed, saved seed, or where improved seed is bought, fertilizer is hardly utilized. I don't know if you know, but in Uganda, we are one of the lowest users of fertilizer. Our main excuse has been our soils are fertile. But whereas the research people say that we can get up to 4 tons of maize in an acre, for example, the majority of our farmers do get between 600 and 1,400 kilos per acre. And I repeat that our fertilizer application rate has continued to be dismal. At the same time, the majority of our people are using the hand hoe. Where the tractor is deployed, it is not the most efficient. I will tell you honestly that a friend of mine and I have farmed in Amuru, and we dared to hire a tractor. They told us the nearest tractor is in such and such a distance. We paid. On the date it was supposed to turn up, it turned up 2 days later. It made literally 3 runs across the field and broke down. It was not repaired until a week later. The point I'm making is that our technologies are such that they're inefficient and they are many times not helping to get productivity to increase. Low input in terms of fertilizer, poor technology in terms of the mechanical way we operate the land, a hand hoe slasher. Many times, even in terms of simple technologies like the right spacing is not followed.
Sam, we seem to be losing your sound. Is he back? Are you hearing me? Sam, I think we are losing your, we are losing you. Sam. Sam, we seem to have lost your audio. Sorry, colleagues, we are trying to get Sam back on. I think we are not hearing him, so we are trying to get him back on. We are really, really sorry about the connection. Hello? Mr. Iga, would you try to speak again and without your video? Oh, good. Mr. Iga, can you hear us? Friends, we really apologize. We are really having a bad connection. We are trying to get that rectified. We apologize for that immensely.
Bwe twali tujja gakunkumuka nenga abali eri ne bagalya.
Mr. Iga, do you want to try again to speak? Just
Hello, do you hear me? Hello?
Can you hear him now?
Mr. Iga, now we can hear you.
Yeah,
Mr. Iga, now you can hear you. Can you hear me?
Thank you. I'll go back a little bit.
Yeah, I think we lost you for about 5 minutes, so you may have to backtrack quite a bit. I think you can lose the video and just keep the audio.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Ronald?
Yes, please.
Do you hear me?
I can hear you clearly now. So I think let's go at that point.
All right. And I believe you've got the presentation now. Try and share it from your screen, please.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that that happened. I was saying that the majority of the background to our farming is that the majority of our people are in subsistence agriculture. Subsistence agriculture, which simply looks at food sovereignty. They try to do whatever they can. So they operate very small quantities, but at least they manage to get some groundnuts, some beans, some cassava, and these quantities are not adequate to get on the market and be influential, except through somebody aggregating. And the aggregators are not the farmers. Whereas a Sempanji who is trying to be commercial is putting in everything possible, including labor. Before you know it, it is that labor which is the most expensive input that your competitor has. But you have to pay for it. He doesn't. The wife plants, the children weed, he harvests, and before you know it, the children themselves don't have school fees. The focus is not on making profit, and it is not income which makes a business grow. It is profit which makes a business grow. So many times you hear our people saying,
yafunye sente, akatunge sente, and the focus is on getting money. But how much of that money is actually profit? When I managed to get up on the screen, we'll look at how we could analyze to see how we make the difference. And so, because we are competing against the smallholder who one says, but how can they go on? They go on, one, because there's no alternative, there's no opportunity cost for their labor, but two, because that's the way they have always lived, that's the way they live. Their focus is not the market, their focus is food production, their focus, the surpluses that they produce to go to the market are incidental, they are not planned to go to the market. And so the competition is high. And the last point I had made before I realized you're not hearing me was that when quality cards came onto the market, I was at university and working on a farm. I needed the money. I was lucky to be allowed to work on the biggest pig farm in the country. And we would supply quality cards with carcasses. Guess what? Our competition was from Lira, Gulu, from Rakai, free-range pigs that do not depend on commercial feed. They are fed on leftovers and greens from the garden, and the labor is not directly paid for. The water is not directly paid for. When we did our pig farming, it was the biggest pig farm in the country at that time, we could hardly break even. We struggled. My research at university, therefore, went into commercial and semi-commercial pig production in and around Kampala. Up to today, I bet, there are many, many farmers who are finding it hard to make it successfully with porkers. When you do winners and you sell, when you set yourself up as a breeder, you will succeed. The winners will go for something profitable. The porkers, hardly. Because the price is such that it is most influenced by the small scale farmer who are numerous, but they are not factoring in their biggest input, which is their labor, since they don't use a lot of improved inputs. So now, that has been the situation. The current situation is that the elite, the Igas and Mukasas and Sempanjis of this town, are putting money into the land. They turn up with their phone and they go away with their phone. And then they start farming on the phone. You find that the majority of, I'm afraid I'll use that word again, the majority of the elites who are going into farming are actually telephone farmers. The majority of people who are new investors in farming in Uganda, who are Ugandans, reside in the city and they visit the farm once every so often. It may be once a week, it may be once every month, it may be even once a quarter. And unfortunately, the way we have structured our human resource development is such that we can hardly afford to have a diploma holder or a degree holder managing our farms because the expectations are so high, and our farms are largely 20-acre and below. Those who are above could afford to have the farm looking after a highly qualified, highly meaning diploma. Otherwise, Iga, who is doing 15 acres of coffee somewhere 200 kilometers away, the best you can get is S4. And what can the S4 do? Only so much. The point I'm making is that the approach we are taking to our farming, and I may be wrong and you are doing it different, but I want to bet that you can hardly find 15% of the new farmers being resident on their farm. And yet it's an old truth that the farmers, the animal's best medicine, the farmer's best medicine for his animals or crops is his own eye. But you can hardly get 15 or even 10% of the new farmers being resident on their farms. A lot of the time, we bring in incomes from our salaries, from our housing rentals, our other incomes, and we put into the farm. And to make matters worse, many times we do not do the correct analysis. That is the situation. The situation also is that corporate farming is coming in. There are people who are large investors in farming who are actually, you can say, taking this town by storm. Think, who is the biggest producer of chicken meat in Uganda? Who is the biggest forest planter in Uganda? Who is the biggest coffee farm in Uganda? Do you hear me? Sorry?
Eh,
You hear me?
Mr. Iga, we can hear you quite well. Let me just mute. I think someone
Somebody
can
was
hear
saying
you.
something, I thought, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
We can
so
hear.
when you think about the corporate farms, those who are big, they're not mostly Ugandan. These are FDI. So FDI is coming in big time. That's the current situation. And foreign money is coming in and actually utilizing the natural conditions and putting in higher technologies. There are people now who are deploying to make sure the right plant population is achieved. There are people in Uganda today who are deploying drones to make sure that fertilizer application, pesticide application is done right. There are people who are actually watching the weather to know when they should plant, when they shouldn't plant. There are people who are using high tech, but they're mostly not Ugandans. Now, against that are we who are doing 10, 15, 20 acres, maybe 50 acres. And as I said, our human resource deployment is such that, let me just use this comparison. Somebody posted this last week on an agribusiness platform I'm on, that the Chinese have taken Ghanaian experts and are paying them $3,800 a month. And the Chinese are now producing their own cocoa to go into chocolate. Everybody knows the biggest consumers of chocolate in the world are the Chinese. They've been depending on cocoa coming in from tropical parts of the world. They've got a bit of tropical something, and they're doing their best to make sure they produce. They're paying $800 a month. How much was the Ghanaian system paying them? You can guess. How much are you paying your farm manager, even as you remain in Kampala, as you remain in Masaka, and the farm is 40, 50, 150 kilometers away? The point I'm making is that whereas the system we are mostly surrounded by hardly costs the inputs that they put in, hardly focuses on the market, hardly knows the unit cost of production, and therefore hardly knows their profitability. The new that we are is not being as effective in terms of planning and checking efficiencies. That is the situation. That is the situation, that we are putting in money, mostly from other places, and we are joining the old farmers, the numerous farmers who are not focusing on profit to do what they are doing. As a result, I'm not surprised that our profitability is not so high, and it isn't. Now, am I saying, therefore, that we need to pay more for agricultural produce? Partly yes, and largely yes. We need to pay more for that matoke. We need to pay more for that maize. We need to pay more for that watermelon in the current farming conditions. Why? Because food especially, but also other agricultural commodities, are not simply a need, they're also a political item. That's how it happens that in many parts of the world, many governments subsidize the farmer. In Uganda, we do not subsidize the farmer to any sensible extent. Secondly, we do not insure the farmer to any sensible extent. Thirdly, we do not provide the farmer with adequate knowledge in terms of weather prediction, in terms of knowing exactly what to do. Our extension system is not anything to write home about, one can argue. Fourthly, our technologies are such that we have not put in place infrastructure to overcome such risks as drought. Luckily, we don't often get floods, except in some parts, but in large parts of Uganda, in the larger parts, we do not have a system for mitigating against production risks. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's the current situation. Thank you very much, Ronald. So you find that we are producing in a system where the truth of the matter is that either we should increase the price that we pay, or we should subsidize the farmer, or we should let the farmer continue in the poverty, in subsistence, sustainable poverty cycle where they are. No wonder more and more people are getting off the land and getting onto the border because they feel they are, and as they get off the land, more and more FDI will take over that land. Before you know it, your grandchildren and mine will be on the 40th floor in an apartment in Nigeria or in Nansana for that matter. And the FDI will be enjoying the 400 acres over there. So that's the current situation. The current situation is such that we talk about the private sector-led economy, and so the private sector-led marketing. And what I say there is that the Nile perch is cannibalizing the indigenous species. This may be a figure of speech, but the truth is, when I was growing up in the 70s, we would have men on bicycles, not one, not two, but more, riding through the village on different days of the week. And they would say, kumi nusu, kumi nusu, kumi nusu. They were selling 10 small fishes, which were called kaachera, for 1 shilling. Now one can say, oh, that's the value of money. No, it's not the value of money. The species, several indigenous species of our lakes and other water bodies have disappeared as a result of the Nile perch. And guess what? Who is the Nile perch now? The other day it was being considered that we should not eat the Nile perch here. We should simply export it for forex. But the indigenous species are gone. It's the same thing here. Whether you're doing coffee, which I am doing, whether you're doing rice, which some people are doing, the FDI corporate big entity with proper linkages and proper planning and reasonable financing is going to produce whatever they produce with high efficiency, and they will not target to sell it mostly here. They will target to export it. Why? Because even though their unit cost of production has come down as a result of efficiency, they prefer to go to a bigger market. After all, how big is the Ugandan market? They will export and they will compete with you across the border to go into the DRC, but you will not compete with them to go across the border to the Netherlands. When we talk about exporting, we are talking about exporting whatever we produce. How much do we process and send out? How much do we produce at competitive prices, the majority of us? If you check, if it wasn't for taxes, rice gets to Uganda from Pakistan cheaper than rice that is mostly produced, that is produced by the small scale farmer in Uganda. So if you are not big enough to be big enough to go out and reduce your costs of production, you end up wallowing in the small market that is flooded by the small quantities that are produced by the majority of our people. The majority of our people are not in any way organized. I must be honest that I think one of the biggest mistakes we ever made was to kill or to allow to die the cooperatives that we had before. I keep saying that by the time I joined by the time I finished A-level, I had seen the first charcoal briquettes made from coffee husks. They were beautiful. They burnt like gas, blue flame. They were made by Busoga growers in Namolesa. A few years later, after the reforms and structural adjustments, that plant was no more. Today, I go there and there are a few blocks and pieces of iron which indicate where that place used to be. But it was the first to make charcoal briquettes, at least the first ones I ever saw, from coffee husks. They were big processors, semi-processors of coffee, and they had gone into another product which was, it was new, 86, 87. It broke down. Today, I don't know how many cooperatives are operating as efficiently as Busoga growers used to operate. And what is the reason? Private sector led. These guys are not doing it right. Let them die. Where is their financing? it's private sector led. Who are the bankers? They are such and such, they make such and such billions, but most of the profits are repatriated. In other words, the margin, that thing which makes businesses grow, is not in agriculture. The profits either are repatriated or they are not made. And there is inadequate knowledge, there is inadequate research. I wish to emphasize that point. The majority of us who are going into farming pay very, very high costs in terms of our own losses. We pay our fees on our farms. You find that those who study agriculture don't do it. Those who do it do not study it. As a result, there's a huge knowledge gap between the practitioners. I bet that Mr. Sempanji, I'm using just Sempanji because he's my friend, I know him, we know each other, he won't feel I'm hitting at him. But I bet that Mr. Sempanji did not study agriculture to a certificate level or to a diploma level. And one might say, oh, but business is business. But guess what? In Denmark, one of the biggest agricultural countries, however small it is, you will not be allowed to operate a farm unless you've got a farmer's diploma or unless you employ someone who has got that diploma. Otherwise, they will take away the lease from you. In England, you're not allowed to study agriculture unless you've had at least 1 year's experience on a farm in the last so many years before you join the university. Otherwise, they send you back and they say, go and attach yourself and then come here. As a result, you find that in our case, we learn on the farm. We pay a very, very high price. The veterinary assistant, the agricultural assistant feels they cannot be employed by Iga with only 10 acres. If they are employed by Iga, they will ask for such a price as so-and-so would pay them, who would pay $3,800. And of course, Iga cannot afford it with 10 acres. So we need to scale up. We need to scale up in terms of size, but especially in terms of efficiency. And so if we go to the next slide, Ronald. Yes, the question was, so what now? So what now? And the thing is, we need to take it seriously. We need to take it seriously where we are at that point where we don't say, I'll go there. Oh, I failed to go there. But I'll go there next weekend. Unfortunately, so-and-so has died. Let me go for the vigil. I probably will drive in the morning. We need to take it seriously. We need to think in terms of being resident. But for that to happen, it means we need to change our lifestyles. Why am I saying we need to do this? Either we should be resident on the farm or we should have competent people that are managing our farms. And when I talk about competency, I don't simply mean that they know how to space for maize and they know how to inject the animal. I'm talking about being competent, that they can actually put things on the computer and analyze, and that they can share with you, like I've failed to share with you today directly from their screen, and that you can ask them what the unit cost of production is, because the profit, like the devil, is in the detail. And so we need to plan. We need to plan, we need to say what infrastructure do we need to put in place in order to be able to make sure that my unit cost of production comes down, that my productivity per acre goes higher, that my human resource is actually deployed 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, not 3-4 hours a day, and like it is in Woodoo, where I come from. We need to be able to say, hey, if I have 20 million, that is for buying the land. But now that I have bought the land, what will happen? Will I deploy a tractor? Will I deploy a hand pump? Where will it come from? How does it affect my cash flow? We need to be able to say, who will manage all this? How much shall I pay them? And so projections that we do for our wholesale shop, for our retail shop, the projections that we do for the corporate employers that give us the other incomes are the same projections we need to do for our farming. We need to pay attention to detail. If we are doing an acre, is it actually an acre? How flat is it? Isn't there an anthill on that acre? Isn't there a big tree which is stopping 40 square meters from being with any productive crop? And so we need to pay attention to detail. Let's go to the next slide, Ronald, please. The question is, how do we do that? How do we pay attention to detail? How do we know anyway what to do? And ladies and gentlemen, all of us here, all of us, I bet, who are here, have an idea of how to use spreadsheets. And so our answer has been, and it will continue to be, the projected income statement. It's a beautiful, beautiful tool that allows us to analyze what we do even before we do it. Ronald, I don't know if you got the one that is worked out, but we could use it as well. As it is, the projected income statement is a simple spreadsheet that allows us, if you expand your screen, it allows us to see what inputs we shall need for the acreage that we are going to operate. And the example that I use is 1 acre. If you take 1 acre of maize, how many hoes will you need? If you are using a tractor, how many tractor hours will you need? How much fuel will you need? How many man hours of the operator will you need for 1 acre? And if you will need seed, of course you will need seed. How many seeds will you need? If you are going to use all that seed, are you going to deploy a planter? So how many hours of the planter will you need? How many pangas? Those are the implements. And if you're going to use a loan, what interest will you pay on the loan? And so that interest on loan is an input. And then you look at the operations and you say, how much will land preparation cost me? Sometimes you do 2 plowings. How much will planting cost me? All this is something we need to do. We need to see, even before we plant 1 seed, how much we can expect. And then we say, all right, how much do I expect to yield in 1 acre? Now, when you go to analyze your incomes, you look at how much you can expect to yield. And you say, oh, from 1 acre, the scientists say that I will get 3 tons. Okay, if I get 3 tons, at what price will I sell? Let us say 600 shillings a kilo. So what income shall I have? This much. You also need to project and say, but I know that many times, because of the management, the fact that I'm not there, the workers are careless, I may lose some of that kilo. So you provide for post-harvest loss. And at the end of the day, you say, all right, it looks like if I do 1 acre of maize, using this kind of technology with fertilizer or without fertilizer, using a tractor or using hand hoe, using, I'm likely to make this much profit. And it is likely to be that each kilo of maize that I'll produce, that is the unit cost of production, will be this much. And then you say, all right, I am going in. I am going in because I see the profitability is this much. Most of us don't do that. Most of us just get in, as I said, and we learn on the farm. But projected income statements can easily be done on a spreadsheet. And if you don't know, please seek some advice. Go to Enterprise Uganda, go to Iris, go to your person who assists you to know how to go about these things. The truth of the matter is we train people to become accountants, just as we train people to become doctors, we need to become effective farmers. And the projected income statement allows us to analyze what we are going to do. Even before we put in 1 shilling, we have an idea of how much that 1 shilling will produce at the end, everything else remaining constant. And talking about remaining constant, what happens is that prices will fluctuate. So in your projected income statement, you save version 1, which said you will sell at 600. But do version 2, which says, what if I sell at 450? But another version could be, what if I sell at 750? Do the sensitivity analysis and say, what if I don't get 3 tons, but I end up with 2 tons per acre? What if I don't end up with 2 tons, but I actually end up with 3.5? Chances are, given that most of our agriculture is nature-fed, rain-fed, when you get 3.5, chances are that all your neighbors will also get a bigger yield. As a result, the price will come down. So if you had planned on 3, but what if it becomes 3.5? Don't say 3.5 at 750. No, 3.5 will likely go to 500 because everybody else has also had a good yield. But the point is, learn how to analyze even before you produce. If you do it on paper and it works on paper, and you say, what if, and it still works, taking the average position. If it works on paper, it will probably work on the ground. But if it doesn't work on paper, it will certainly not work on the ground. People will tell you, oh, but all these people, do they analyze? No, maybe not all these people analyze, but you tell me, how many of them hand over their farming business to the next generation? It's not because the next generation just doesn't find farming sexy. No, it's because a lot of the time, the people who did it this generation were simply juggling and finding their way about. We need to go into agriculture, building it for the medium to long term, and therefore we need to systemize it. I should be able to hand over to my daughter or to my son and say, if you look at this spreadsheet, it will show you how much money you will make in 6 months. But if you prefer, go and work for so and so, who will pay you so much money. On the other hand, if you work on your own farm, this is how much money you will make. We should be able to show that. And the projected income statement is the tool. Let's go to the next slide. The other things that we can do, even as we wait for the next slide, the other things that we can do are that we need to look at our efficiencies. What is the spacing I'm deploying? Mr. Joseph Nkandu of Nu Cafe, some of you will know him. A few years ago, with different partners and colleagues, started experimenting with spacing of coffee. Traditionally, we've known that coffee is to be done 10 feet by 10 feet. Ronald, you can go on to the next slide. But Nu Cafe has been experimenting with reducing the spacing. And so they do 10 by 5 feet. I saw in Brazil, they grow a different kind of coffee. It's Arabica, it is shorter. The conditions are such that it doesn't grow as big as ours, but their spacing is closer. And according to Joseph Nkandu, what they are doing now is they're finding that the coffee they planted 3, 4, 5 years ago in a different spacing gives them a higher yield per acre than our traditional 10 by 10. What are we doing in terms of researching and analyzing and making sure that we tease our own things out? If Matoke is planted at 10 by 10, is it true that Mpologoma is 10 by 10 and Nakawulu is 10 by 10 and Mukuba Konde is 10 by 10 and Chisansa is 10 by 10? Well, everyone knows Chisansa has got a much wider span with its leaf, whereas Nakabulu has got a smaller one. So does it have to be 10 by 10? So we need to research, we need to question, we need to get our universities onto our farms, we need to take our farms into the universities, we need to interrogate this. In this new era, we need to look at farming as a business. And so therefore, we owe it to ourselves to research just as much as Kenya sugar does into the varieties of sugarcane, into which one grows faster, which one needs less moisture, and stuff like that. And as I mentioned, the Nile perch is cannibalizing the local species almost to extinction. You gentlemen and ladies who are farming 10, 20, 30, 40 acres, the Nile perch might get you. We need to step up. The PIS, the projected income statement, shows us that planning is key. What do you really want to do? What do you really plan to do? What do you really want to achieve? What profit? What will give you that profit? Do it on paper. As I said, if it works out on paper, it will probably work on the ground. But if it doesn't work on paper, it will certainly not work on the ground. Start with the numbers. Do it on paper first, and then take it to the field. Cost everything. If you don't cost it, it will cost you. Please cost everything. And one might say, but that detail. I'm telling you, it's the detail. It's the detail, stupid. That detail is what will tell you even 2 shillings per egg will make you incur a huge loss. That detail will tell you that borrowing at 19% instead of 18.5% will make a big difference. That detail will tell you that if the management of the farm is such that they pilfer 40 kilos of coffee every week, 40 kilos of coffee every week, and you're not there to see that it happens, before you know it, that's it. That 40 kilo, and you might say, oh, but that's just 5 kilos a day. Yes, of course. How many days a week? How many weeks a year? That detail. Cost everything. If you need to pay the manager a little bit more so that you attract higher integrity, higher brains, do more. But analyze that detail. Please look at risk management. What if using the spreadsheet, what if the yield goes lower? What if the price goes lower? What if? And then in reality, say, hey, but what if I take out insurance? It will cost me a little bit more, but what will it give me in return? Maybe the first season, there will be no problem. But what if there is a season, a problem in the second season? What if? Do we know what insurance we can take out? What other way can we hedge, or can we kind of safeguard ourselves? We shouldn't continue in the traditional way. The traditional way of risk management was that we would do obulimi bwa kafankunali. So if the maize fails, the sorghum will not fail because sorghum is more resistant to sun. If the beans fail, the mpinnamuti, the kajanas kajan, I forget the English name for it, mpinnamuti in my language or my mother's language, kajanas kajan in the botanical language, is more resistant to dryness than beans, Faziola beans. They would then go on and plant this and plant that. Before you know it, 15 enterprises, 30 enterprises on 2 acres. If you go in for 1 specific or 2 specific or even 3 specific ones, do the technologies to make sure they don't fail, manage the risk. Sometimes when it's not a crop failure risk, you find that you meet market failure risks. So what do? What have you done to make sure that your market will be there tomorrow, that your market will be there the next day, even if there is a glut? How many of us actually take out contractual tie-ins? Sometimes they will let you down, like Henry is indicating. You promise to deliver at a certain price, but I mentioned earlier, look at it medium to long term. Don't look at it in short term. That is why it becomes extremely important for those of us who are getting into farming to ask ourselves, what are our financing mechanisms? Ronald, our next slide, please. We need to ask ourselves, what are our financing mechanisms? When you look at your financing mechanisms, no, go back a little bit. Go back still, a little back. So after this, the next slide, which should be, no, sorry, Ronald. Okay, number 10, slide number 10. Yes, I was saying, yes, let's stay there. I was saying, what are our financing mechanisms? I always ask myself, how can it be that Google can be given, what is it called? A penalty. And the European Union says, Google, you did bad business in Ireland, we want you to pay 7 billion. And Google doesn't collapse. How does it happen? How does it happen that everybody else can be saying, oh, at this price, we cannot plant rice next season? Google thinks about their reserves, thinks about insurance, thinks about what will happen 15 years from today if this happens. One of our challenges is many times we get into farming and we do not have a fallback position in terms of where the money will come from if we make a loss in the first year. or if we make a loss in the 4th year. And unfortunately, many times when we make profits in the 3rd year, we take all the money out to do something else altogether, sometimes something for pleasure. And when we get a problem in the 5th year, we lament about the 5th year, forgetting the good things of the 4th year. And so we need to think like that. As I mentioned, we need to do analysis of how farming methods, the PIS helps us to see what if the yield against the price, post-harvest losses, savings rates against price, post-harvest losses against price, and we need to look at value addition. Now, let me emphasize this thing about value addition. Everybody talks about value addition, value addition, value addition. But again, when you do the analysis, you will find that when you do value addition, the initial capital has to be higher. And in terms of, let's say, milling, in terms of bagging, in terms of packaging, and before you know it, the profitability per unit kilo of posho is lower. So let's say you go on and make 400,000 after deploying 2 million. The profitability ends up being a fifth. Whereas if you had sold maize as grain, actually the profitability ends up being 30% or so. And so the decision would be, should I add value or should I grow more acreage? And sometimes it makes a lot of sense to grow more acreage.
Mr. Iga, we are struggling a bit to get you. Ooh. So we seem to have lost Mr. Iga there. Let's try to get him back online so that he can summarize. His line seems to have dropped, but let's try to get him back.
Sorry, there was a disconnection there. I was talking about doing the analysis. Do you hear me okay now?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. You're back now.
Thank you. I was emphasizing the question of value addition and using the projected income statement, which is a very easy way to project what might happen. It's a very easy way of seeing how things might go well before they go there. Ronald, go on to the slide number 11, I think.
Okay.
And so once you've established that you are good in terms of your efficiencies on the farm, the technologies are right, you are doing the right spacing, you're doing the right, for example, let me just mention this, Henry. In planting matoke, in harvesting matoke, in harvesting bogoya, in harvesting indizi, do you know how many Ugandan farmers actually note the date when the ngo fell? Those of you who don't know Uganda, the ngo is the inflorescence of the banana. When it comes out, it is that heart-shaped flower, which is a big. It's kind of yeah, it's like a cone. It comes out and then it falls, and as it peels off, the insects pollinate the flowers, and the flowers become the fingers. After some time, the whole bunch is formed. But the day that inflorescence falls against the stem, how many of us ever note that date? Because In the tropics, from the day that Ngo falls, you count 90 to 100 days and the banana can be harvested. Why is it important? As a technique in management, you can tell the farm manager to simply tell you how many Ngos fell this week, and you make a note. So many inflorescences fell this week, which means they are going to start opening, which means the pollination is going to start occurring. Then you know that 90 to 100 days later, you've got so many bunches that you'll be sending to the market. Believe it or not, it's a simple thing which can be done to help you plan ahead in terms of what you will need to market. But the point is, once you've got the technologies right, you know when your yield will come. Maybe you've made provisions for irrigation. Dr. Serunjoji in Nakaseke is irrigating coffee, and he will tell you that he knows for sure that an irrigated crop will yield much higher, even though the initial investment is much higher. An irrigated coffee will yield much higher and give a much higher profitability. And because you are irrigating, you can promise your buyer a certain volume at a certain quality in a particular time. But once you've taken care of those technologies, then think about going up the value chain. If I take the value chain to be from the left to the right on your screen, where you have the inputs, then you have the production activities, then you have the post-harvest handling activities, you have the marketing, you have other services. You ask yourself, where are you best selling off? Are you in agriculture to sell the crop? Are you in agriculture to sell the inputs? Are you in agriculture to sell, to add value? Are you in agriculture to bring it all the way to the table? I know one gentleman who is running a restaurant along Entebbe Road, and he says he produces his own beef. He slaughters it and he roasts it. And he thinks that works for him. What works for you? That analysis has to be made right from the beginning. And you say, for that matter, I will need to deploy that this much. Many times as farmers, things happen to us. Things happen to us. They refuse to give us money as a loan. They refuse to pay for our things. They refuse to pay a certain price. They refuse. It's a lot of the time, it's because we did not deliberately plan ahead. So if you're already in it, step back. I know one gentleman who was doing eggs, 30,000 layer capacity. And he came and said, but excuse me, I'm producing the eggs. There's a trailer taking eggs every week. But the bank says I am defaulting. All the money goes through the bank. And indeed it was true. He was producing eggs. He was producing so many trays a week. The trailer was taking them away. The money was going to the bank, and the bank was still saying you're defaulting on your loan. The challenge was that he had not analyzed the profitability per egg. When we analyzed the profitability of the egg, the advice was sell all the chickens immediately. And it's like, but these have just started laying. These are in mid-laying. And we said, sell everything immediately and pay the bank. Why am I making this point? If you are going to sell eggs using bank financing, have you checked your efficiency to say that each egg will be produced at 300 shillings and I will sell it at 340? Am I better off not producing eggs? Am I going to wait to sell off the off layers before I pay the bank? And so will you sell meat and eggs? Will you sell meat only? Will you sell eggs only if you're in poultry? And so up the value chain, will you do cuts? I'm producing turkeys now. And my wife was just teasing me the other day that she now knows there is no market for turkeys because I've gone to 3-4 different restaurants and offered free samples. And the only restaurant that had tied in 2 years ago, unfortunately closed down because of COVID. The others that I talked to said, we'll get back to you. Anyway, today, I've got turkeys ready for the market and there's no market. What about you? What did you plan? who will consume what you produce, at what price, which money did you use to finance what you're financing. And so situation is as it is today. What do I do? If you are bigger, if you can get bigger, think about everything and get it to that level where you can say, all right, I'll put them in the freezer and I'll sell them slowly. People say get online. Yes, you get online. What about the cost of transportation? In the meantime, they're eating more. In the same way, think at what stage of the value chain you will stop. Go on, Ronald, please. And so I'll look at these key messages. The key message to me, what I have seen practically and by working with other farmers, advising here and there, I must be honest that the food that comes from the farm is incidental. The main crop is coffee. But like the peasant that I am, that many of us have grown up to be because of our backgrounds, we are working corporate, we are elite investors in farming, but still certain things pull to us. And so my manager convinces me, you know, you're doing coffee, but put in matoke. You know, you can't go wrong with this land and matoke. And you say, but excuse me, 190 kilometers away, where will you sell? We will sell, people sell. Guess what? Indeed, you've got coffee, you've got matoke, you've got ndizi, you've got bogoya, and then before you know it, the manager has cleared the patch and put in beans. And at the end of the day, you even get off your plan. Insist on sticking with your plan as you analyzed it. Insist on knowing where we will market. Insist on having a fallback position. What will be, and that's where the corporate salary, that's where the rental income, that's where can enable you to get a little bit bigger. Let me talk to savings clubs, which call themselves investment clubs. We are investment clubs which have actually got stuck with money and they're just savings clubs. And the best that we are being able to do is to go into the money markets and invest in unit trusts. The main reason is that we want quick returns. Investment clubs are not putting money into researching for 10 years from today. They're not putting money into saying we will make a loss for the first 3-4 years. The law allows us to make losses for the first 3-4. Foreign direct investment is allowed up to 7 years. We don't make our returns. As a result, you find that our financing of our operations is remaining only so little. As a result, our operations are remaining only so small. As a result, our management, human resource management levels are remaining only so little. As a result, we continue to subsidize the farms that we are operating. I'm speaking at my scale. I'm speaking at the scale of the elite farmer that I talked about. When you jump from that level to the FDI, they do their research. They know what they will do 5 years from today, 10 years from today. They tie into certain markets. They know when they might make a loss if this happens. They provide for retained earnings to create reserves, fallback positions. They go into insurance and they honor their contracts. We operate small. We compete with small. We target small market. We do not prepare to certain standard. And so what do? Let us plan better. If you are in it already, step back. Like that gentleman of 30,000 layer capacity. If you need to sell off and start afresh. If you need to stop and breathe and start afresh. Get the necessary knowledge you can. Pay for a little bit of consultancy. Work with your consultant. Go to Enterprise Uganda. Go and say, a private sector foundation, can you support me? Who can support me? We need to make noise, but against plans that we have made. Plan. Do that projected income statement, do it again. Focus on the market. Start with the numbers, aim at a profit. Focus on the market. Start with the numbers, aim at a profit. For me to assume that I will sell the turkeys anyway, it was an idea. Most of the turkeys you see on the street are 4 or 5 years old and they reach maturity and they've got a lot of fat on the breast and they're huge, but they're also so tough in the meat. I wanted to produce turkeys between 12 and maximum 24 months, but averaging 18 months. The quality is good. Those who ate turkey last Christmas from here, they said it is very good. Pricing 25 kilos per 25,000 per kilo. How many Ugandans are willing to pay 25,000 per kilo? So I should have thought about the market a lot more. I'm learning on the job. I'm willing to pay the price. I'm thinking medium to long term. Focus on the market, start with the numbers, aim at a profit. If the numbers don't add up, do them again. If they don't add up again, do them again. If in all scenarios it doesn't work, don't go into it just for purposes of hope. But as I said, medium to long term. Agriculture is not a single season undertaking. It is not, Ronald, am I with you?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay, I'm seeing a different screen. I don't know if it's me. But agriculture is medium to long term, and we have to be in for the long haul. So don't get discouraged if in the first 3-4 years you've not made any headway. If your plan shows that you're going to break even in the 5th year, if it can be earlier, the better. Make your returns, watch your numbers, and keep going. Grow what you know what you grow, be known for what you grow. There is a lot of message in there, ladies and gentlemen. Grow what you know, but the question is, what do you know? How much do you know coffee? How much do you know matoke? If you wake any Ugandan farmer today and you say, all right, at this, at what spacing are you doing your coffee? 10 by 5. They're most probably talking about 10 feet by 5 feet. And you say, okay, so how many plants are those in an acre? They should be able to give it to you just like that. And you say, okay, so how many kilos of kiboko do you expect per tree? Okay, how many kilos of parchment do you expect per tree? How many, and okay, so what fertilizer will you use? How much of
Sam, we seem to have lost you again. Ooh. All right, let me just try to get him back.
I was lost there for a moment.
Yes, Sam, I think
known for what you.
Yeah, we can hear you now, Sam. I think you can continue. Let's just try to wrap up within the next 5 minutes. I think our time has run.
Yeah, thank you. So grow what you know and be known for it. And that means you got to stay steady. You got to stay steady. Do the projections, try your best not to make a loss, make a profit. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Once your medium to long term shows that you're okay. Create linkages. I know that Enterprise Uganda is working with Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, with World Bank, and they're working with farmers to create effective producer organizations that link into the market, that link into financing, that link into processing, that link yourself into something. In Uganda today, most of us are too small to individually make an impact on the market. But if we were linked up together into producer organizations, we are so many, we can overturn the market. We can dictate things. So create effective linkages and improve efficiencies. I've already talked about that. And look at targeted planning, targeted financing, using our own savings. If we have to take out bank money, what should it be like? If we have to go to our investment groups, hey, do we understand that we are in for patient capital? And so we go into it when we are very, very well informed. And once we know that we are producing at the most efficiency the land can do, we've taken care of technologies. We're using the fertilizers. We are making provisions to see that our crops won't dry for one month of no rain. Then we can say, go up the value chain. It is folly to say, let us add value when you produced 1,000 kilos of maize per acre, and you hope to compete against the one who produced 3,000 per acre just because you've added value. Next slide, please. And so you can skip that one, go to the next one. That one was talking about that importance of linkages. And so I would say, think about it this way. As you're thinking, as you're acting, evaluate. Evaluate, evaluate, evaluate. That projected income statement, for me, everyone who is in farming should have it on their laptop, should have it on their phone. You should be able to punch in and say, if my chickens are laying at 60%, what does it mean in terms of the cost of the egg? If my chickens are laying at 90%, what does it mean in terms of the cost of at which I'm producing the egg? If the feed is, if the cost of feed changes, what does that mean? Learn, unlearn, and relearn what you are doing. But I would say, indeed, all of us constantly need to ask ourselves, it sounds like cliche, but we need to ask ourselves those questions. Where am I? Where do I want to go? How do I get there? And look at what we have and start off. If we are already there, and continue. But when constantly we are analyzing, and those linkages will pay off, those efficiencies will pay off. We need to think in terms of how do we get more efficient, either by linking with other farmers. In our small individuality, we link with other farmers to create pools that can compete, or by getting bigger individually in order that we can influence the market, and then we can go up the value chain. I think that's my last slide, Ronald. And so I would say, yeah, leave that slide off. That's my last slide. That
All right.
We need to learn and relearn and ask ourselves, where do we want to go? Where are we today? How do we get there? And the PIS, if you don't cost it, it will cost you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Iga, for that submission. Big thank you for the passionate and elaborate submission on this subject. We certainly want to apologize. Our connections were not as good. So we're just requesting for just about 10 more minutes so that we can allow a couple of questions to Mr. Iga. I'll just, so we'll possibly close our session at 10:45. We apologize for that. Remy, you have your hand up. If you want to ask a question, make a submission, please do put up your hand and I'll give you a chance to do that. Mr. Iga, thanks a lot for the elaborate discussion on this subject. It's a subject which is close to many of our hearts for sure. And it's really a journey which we hope we can take to transform our agriculture into profitable and kind of transformative businesses. Remy, I'll hand over to you to ask your question.
Thank you, Ronald. Thank you, Mr. Iga, for the presentation. It has really been a wonderful presentation. It shows someone who has really made the research in the marketing and the pricing. So anyway, my question is, can we have an access to the recording? Because I personally came in late, but for the few things I listened to, I really think I missed a lot, and I would love to learn more from this. So I don't know whether we can be able to access the recording of this meeting or webinar.
Yes, Remy, the recording will be available on the Enterprise Uganda YouTube page and on the Facebook page. So it will be recorded. It should be available in a couple of days. So that's a yes. Henry and then Daisy.
Sam, thank you very much. You left me in space a little bit confused. On one side, we should have inputs. We should, because people like me and you, we can put inputs into our farms to get the maximum yield. But at the same time, you said we are competing with people that are putting in nothing. I don't know. When I said that day, you left me in space. I was like, okay, I put in more, and then the cost of my product is going to be much higher. Yet I'm competing with people that are virtually putting in nothing. How the reconciliation of those two statements, because
Okay.
yeah, basically that's it.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I hear you. Yeah.
Henry?
Shall we take two more and then?
Yeah, I think let's take a couple more and then you can answer once. Daisy, you had your hand up. Daisy, are you there? Oh, okay. No worries. If we have any other question, please do come through. There are a couple of comments coming through. I think there was a question here. Anyone else keeping turkeys? Can you help with what they feed their turkeys on? I think that was Esther, very specific question about those keeping turkeys. We had a comment from, yeah, I think, yeah, there was a question here from, just 1 minute. Yeah, a couple of people saying thank you for the feedback, Esther. Thank you. We are also having a number of messages appreciating from Hussein, from Daisy too, and Josephine. Thanks a lot. I think I don't see any other hand up. Mr. Iga, you could possibly go with that question, and then we could possibly take one more round if time allows.
Thank you. Let me just say, Josephine, it's nice to see you here. Not that it's not nice to see everybody else, but Josephine, it's nice to see you here. Remy, Henry, Remy, I think Ronald has answered you. Henry, I hear you, but let me quickly answer about turkeys. Turkeys are the greatest vegetarian animal without 3 stomachs. They are like the single stomach cows. They utilize vegetable matter so well. So just to let you know, a bit of grain and a bit of grass, and that is the trick really, grain and grass, as much grass as possible. But we can discuss the specifics. Someone said maybe like chickens, yes, but turkeys and grass are inseparable. Now, Henry, I hear you very, very clearly. And to be honest with you, I think that we might talk about raw farmers scheme. We might talk about Bonaba Gagawale. We might talk about Operation, all these efforts. But we need to first address the fundamental question of whether our main production sector actually makes money or not. And when I say making money, I mean profit. And at the moment, we are not doing that as a people, as a government, as a state. We are not doing that. We need to do that. We will find that either we need to subsidize the farmer in their current state, or we need to increase the price deliberately of most of what we produce as a country for our internal people. Or we've got to accept that we are going to wallow in poverty for a while. The majority of our people are going to wallow in poverty for a while as the private sector eventually lifts the agricultural sector out of its wallowing state. That's my own conclusion. And so what happens? The most efficient, the most market-oriented producers, agricultural producers in Uganda, do not target the agricultural market. They send somewhere else where they can get a niche market. That's one thing we should aim to do. I know a lady, Kenyan, who operates here and exports fruits to Germany. She pays whatever she pays. She invests in organizing the farmers, and she gets the fruit to go to Germany, and Germany pays a handsome price. Here, there's somebody I know who constantly is marketing on social media her fruits And I'm happy for her. But the thing is, when you take it down the chain, how much is the farmer making? So that's one part. The other part is that, yes, indeed, we've got to be able to say, I've worked it out. For the first 4 years, I'm going to make a loss, but in the 5th year, I'll make profit. And one trick, which I hope is going to pay off, is to indeed organize. So where we are growing coffee in Kakumiro, when we are planning to plant 2,000 trees, we take another at least 500, and we encourage our neighbors to plant also. The idea being that at the end of the day, when we are marketing, we can have bargaining volumes that we can go to someone and say, we've got these volumes, come and pick them. This is the price we want because we put in this much money per kilo. And we can even say, we want to be financed upfront. Like Dr. Serunjoji told me, once he's got his system in place, he gets financed upfront, up to a reasonable amount of money. So we need to stop working individually in as long as we are so small. When we get bigger, we may learn from Denmark, where even 1,000-acre farms are actually in cooperatives. So organization, individual steady planning, contract farming, for example, where it may lose you money this season, it may not lose you money the next season. That's the way it goes, up and down, up and down. Those linkages I talked about. So Henry, it can be a long discussion, but those are some of the things that I know do work. And sometimes you actually manage to break even. But the truth of the matter is that overall, either you are very big and you change the dynamics of your own situation, or you got to organize and link with the others. Otherwise, we accept that most of us are not going to get rich through agriculture.
Thank you, Sam, for that submission. I have two Roberts, Robert Sache and yes, Ms. Chucks, you are most welcome. So Robert Sache, please go first. And then
Thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation, Mr. Iga. It's been a very informative presentation. I picked up on a specific issue. I know the discussion today was not really aimed at investment clubs, yet you hit, you touched on investment clubs and the type of investments that they are making with their money, the unit trusts and all. I feel that this is something that requires a specific discussion in future. Because as we know, most of the corporates are involved in this, and unfortunately, these are very risk-averse clubs. Even the investments that they make, you find is really in real estate and the rest. But maybe it would be good to give us a bit of a picture on what other investments can be of pooling of resources. I think it's a good way of actually, and to be able to, where you can encourage people to take more risk as investment clubs. I find that
I don't know if it's me, but I'm losing that voice.
yeah, I think
very
Robert
risk averse. Yeah, of course. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, Robert, that's better now. That's better now.
Did you get my discussion though? Because I was saying that we may need another engagement that's specific to investment clubs and the kind of financing. Okay, the financing may not be a big issue, but the kind of investment and to encourage them to take more risk, because as it is,
I think that point was
because of pooling of resources and the very many minds that feel they have an interest. You've picked it up. Okay, maybe I can stop at that. The other one was also dairy farming, to give a bit more highlight on the inputs and the outputs, but also the dynamics of dairy farming, because you find that everyone is doing dairy farming in a different setting. Some are doing zero grazing, some are doing semi-intensive. So yeah, just a bit more input, but it may not be a specific discussion for today. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks a lot, Robert. Robert Vivashija,
Yes.
please go ahead. Henry, did you have another question?
It looks like Henry just didn't put his hand down.
Yes. I think Henry. We seem to have lost Robert Vivashija. I think when he gets back, you'll ask. I think Sam, you can make a response to that question, and then we can wrap up the day.
Robert said I hit at the investment clubs, then changed it and said hinted. I actually hit at the investment clubs deliberately. The thing is, Ronald probably can organize that there can be a specific discussion about investment clubs and how they should go about things. But I'll just mention that, one, I've noticed that many of our investment clubs actually are savings clubs, and they go for the most safe investments possible, which is all right in terms of not wanting to take risk. But what that means is that we will, again, ask yourself, when the profit is made by you, the other people also making profit, who are they? Where do the bigger profits go? Or where do the other profits go? Not back into this economy. So the economy will remain smaller. Two, our investment clubs do not actually deliberately invest in researching and creating feasible, actualizable plans. They want to have like what is it called? A kangaroo ride. They want to ride on what is easy. No, investment clubs should become a little bit more bold. But as I say, Mr. Mukasa, Enterprise Uganda could organize another discussion. That's not for today. But what investment clubs could do is to deliberately aim at, for example, either financing agriculture or farming themselves. And so they say, in the first 2 years, we shall put up money to acquire 100 acres. In the next 2 years, we shall put up money to buy equipment. In the 5th and 6th year, we will open and plant. In the 7th year, we shall be on the market, like that. But I will say research and longer term planning is one thing that we need to do as investment clubs. I'm one of them. I'm one of us in those investment clubs. That's what I'll say, Ronald, about investment clubs.
All right. I think you'll also make a comment on dairy. He asked about dairy as an industry. I'll ask Robert, the proprietor of Chuck's Foods. I think, please ask your question. Robert, you can unmute and then ask, and then Sam can wrap up and make his final remarks. Yes.
As Robert comes on, may I point out that someone is asking for the last slide?
Thank you very much, Ronald, and thank you very much. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Iga, for the presentation. It was very, very informative. I wanted to pick up on the issue of maybe to introduce myself. I'm Robert Vivashija. I'm the proprietor of Chuck's Foods. We are into value addition of citrus fruits, and so far, and it's already hitting the market. But just to highlight on value addition, as in your presentation, I think it is something that we as Ugandans have not taken up, and it is still on small scale. I don't know, Mr. Iga, when you talked about value addition visa.
Oh dear. Robert?
be the traditional way of doing business in agriculture. I see ourselves still tied in that vicious cycle of poverty where selling things raw. You can imagine how. Yes, hello. Do you hear me? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, Robert.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on the road, and
Ronald, I think let's take him.
I think that at the heart of Robert's question was this question of the opportunities which exist in value addition, which haven't been fully taken up by the majority of Ugandans, and how, like, what are your comments on that? And possibly Sam, you'll also make your final remarks.
Thank you. So you'll have to mute
Karamoja
Robert.
is a bit network problematic area.
Robert, you being on the road, you phase in and out.
You'll bear with me. But are just three fundamental issues that to me, Ronald?
Robert, I think well, I think Sam, you can go ahead. Then we will wrap up. But I think you can touch on Robert's the bit which you got.
Yeah, I got the bit about value addition, and I think there are two things I want to say. One, I wish to emphasize the fact that the way we've largely understood value addition, we have understood it from the technical side of value addition. That, for example, if you take maize and turn it into posho, you've added value. Technically, that is true. But for you as a farmer, it may lose you value, actually, in that you take 1,000 kilo and turn them into posho, and the profitability per kilo of posho is much lower than the profitability per kilo of maize. And yet you've needed more money in order to sell your product. You would rather have taken that money and multiplied your number of units. Instead of producing 1 ton, you produce 2 tons, rather than turn 1 ton into 600 kilograms of posho. The point is that we need to do that analysis. That's what I will say. Whatever we decide to do, we should specifically do the analysis of what we do. What will it cost me to turn 1 ton of maize into posho, to package it, to label it, to transport it to the miller, If it is more profitable, do that. Or if you've got such large volumes that if you don't turn them into posho, they are likely to go bad if posho keeps longer than maize, then that's when. In other words, let's be deliberate and focus on the profit that each operation adds. Adding value to me means that you capture a higher portion of the profit that is ultimately paid by the consumer, that you capture a higher profit or profitability of that which is ultimately paid by the consumer. If you don't, you would rather use the Chinese model. Small margin, very, very high turnover. Small margin, high turnover. So increase your productivity on the land, don't add value, but make more tons. It may make more sense. That value addition is not simply just a question of technically changing the product. No, it should mean to us adding value to our money. How much more money do I make? Secondly, as to whether we need to do it more, yes, definitely. We need to add value for all the various reasons. Yesterday, but one, stopping at Karere, we actually bought 7 pineapples, 7 sweet Ugandan pineapples at 10,000 shillings. How much do you think the farmer is getting for it? If it is getting to Karere and it is less than 1,500, the farmer is getting 500. So we need to learn to dry the pineapple. We need to turn it into juice. We need to turn it into canned chunks of pineapple. We need to do this, yes. And so this is where I had hoped investment clubs would go. Investment clubs would say, okay, since everybody says it's private sector led, let's be the private sector. Let's research into pineapples. Let's research into the Teso oranges. Let's research into the Acholi mangoes, and we will invest. So these first 3 years we are saving. In the 5th year, we shall set up a plant. But yes, we need to. Why? Of course, it will allow us to get to wider markets, to keep the things a bit longer. It will allow us to hold back and control the price a bit. And please, let's not forget liaising with other farmers, creating those linkages, going into contract farming if necessary, create longer term obligatory, and then commit and get to be known for what we do. And we continue doing what we know and insure ourselves against different risks. Let me end with this. Thank you very much. The aim should be that we change our mindset from simply production to aiming at a profit and pulling as many people with us as possible. It won't be easy, but it's a determination we've got to make. That way, when we can show the government that this is what we've done and still this is how we suffer, we can push and push and push and change some of the policies if we need to. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sam, for that lovely deliberation. I want to send out a big thank you to everyone who has been part of the call. People have kept on, and we apologize for overrunning. We usually end at 10:30, but we had a couple of technical challenges which made us overrun. But I'm very glad that you have all participated, and a big thank you to each of you for being here. The presentation, Audrey, will be shared on your emails. If you for all of you who signed in, we possibly captured your email address, so we'll send you that submission. Next week, Thursday, again, we will be meeting on another subject, which we'll communicate sometime early next week. We are very excited about what is happening in the business community. Something which Mr. Iga talked about is this the need to make sure that we are engaging more, that we are networking more. And one of the things which we really are working very hard to do is that these connections that we're making, we can be able to get through. So we encourage you, please post your name, the business you do, your contact details, so that if there's someone out here who wants your services, they can be able to do just that. We'll keep the meeting open for the next 5 to 10 minutes to just make sure that that happens. Mr. Iga, we might have to call you back to talk about dairy. I think there was a specific question on that which you didn't turn on. I'll just request that possibly, Mr. Iga, I'm going to request that you post your contact in the chat room so that people can be able to reach out and be able to engage with a couple of more questions. Once again, please do post your name, the contact, what you do, the business you are into, so that we can be able to continue doing business. Audrey, Mr. Iga is going to post his contact in a moment. I'm going to also ask our technical team to just put it out there so that we can be able to continue growing. Once again, Mr. Iga has posted his contact, and he really likes being reached out to on WhatsApp. So please do reach out to him and save his number. A big thank you to all of you for joining us. And we'll be here again next Thursday at 9 o'clock, seeing how we can help our businesses grow, how we can help our businesses recover. As Enterprise Uganda, we are committed to ensuring that the Ugandan local business owner wins. And when you win, you create jobs. When you create jobs, the economy inevitably expands. So thank you. And once again, we'll meet again next Thursday. The technical team is going to play some music in the background. Please remain chatting. If you want to connect with someone, please do that. We'll keep the meeting open for the next 5 minutes. Thanks a lot and have a lovely week.
Thank you, Ronald. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For those who are still there, thank you for saying thank you. I just would like to say that it is really a pleasure to be able to discuss these things. I think it's even a duty that we should discuss these things, that we should be able to all of us engage. The devil is in the detail. We need to be able to engage, encourage each other, and simply show objectively our arguments to all the powers that be. Then we can make steps forward. Thank you very much.
And we also know that if it wasn't for the death of the Prophet, we wouldn't be celebrating his July birthday month. Let us rejoice and celebrate DJ Jaivani 799.